Now, more than 100 senior business leaders have signed an open letter publicly backing the Conservatives over the party's handling of the economy. And Ed Miliband today has said that if elected, they will ban zero-hours contracts. Let's talk about all those things with the Business Secretary, Vince Cable, who joins me from Westminster. Very good afternoon to you, Mr. Cable. Zero-hours contracts, first of all, Labour says they'll end the misery of zero-hours contracts. Do you think they're miserable?
Well, some are, some aren't, and that's why I, as a Liberal Democrat business secretary 3 years ago, started investigating the research rather than the anecdotes. It found that, you know, there is exploitation, undoubtedly, which is why I brought in legislation to curb these exclusivity contracts. But it's also true that large numbers of people, for example, full-time students, people of pensionable age, value the flexibility that they provide.
Now, presumably you agree with the Prime Minister, you couldn't live on one.
Probably not, but it depends entirely how they were couched. There are a lot of arrangements which are described as zero-hours contracts which involve flexible working. And as I say, where there is abuse, of course it must be dealt with. But let's not exaggerate the problem. I mean, Ed Miliband talks about a zero-hours Britain, but we're talking actually about 1 in 50 who are employed on this type of contracts, and the abusive ones we are now legislating, or we have legislated to deal with.
Well, I mean, what proportion do you think are abusive ones? Because the numbers are a bit hard to get hard and fast, aren't they? That Labour Force survey is self-reporting 697,000 people in the last quarter saying they think they're on zero-hours contracts.
Yes, it is. 700,000 is the figure that we're working with, which is just over 1 in 50 of the labour force. And when we did some very detailed consultation and evidence gathering, it was very clear that the main area of abuse were companies which, you know, gave this type of contract where you're paid if and given a job if there's work available, but it's not guaranteed, but where they ban the workers from having contracts with other companies. Now, that was clear abuse, and we've now legislated to stop it.
OK, but what about this proposal from Mr. Miliband that is saying that if you work regular hours but you haven't got a contract, you should be given one after 12 weeks of work?
Well, we look very carefully at that, and it's simply impractical, because there are a very large number of companies, particularly small companies, which simply do not have regular work, and they wouldn't be able to survive as companies if they were forced to enter into fixed-term contracts of that kind. Nor would it suit many of the workforce. I mean, if you are, for example, caring after young children, you want to be able perhaps to do a bit of work, but to have the fallback position if there's an illness or there's a domestic issue, not to be able to go in for work. And once you remove the flexibility, or students, for example, who have to fit their work around their vacations and their examinations, and once you remove the flexibility, you do damage to the workers.
OK, let me ask you about this letter. 100 business leaders more or less supporting the Conservatives in what's been done to the economy. Of course, your party's been part of this government as well. Do you feel a bit miffed at not being mentioned in this letter for what they deem to be the successful economic management?
Well, certainly, as a Liberal Democrat business secretary, I've been part of the positive recovery that's taken place, and have helped to mould it. But it's not an issue about being miffed. I think what I would warn the business people is to be careful what you wish for, because the Conservatives are wanting to veer off to the right. They're holding out this prospect of a referendum on Europe that will create serious instability and cast questions over the future of our role in the single market. They're wanting to embark on very, very deep, ideologically driven cuts in key services like education, in skills, in science, innovation, which are absolutely fundamental to the efficiency, the productivity of the economy that business should want.
OK, lastly, I want to ask you about Mr. Clegg and this difficulty he seems to be having in his Harlem constituency, this latest poll, and it's not the first time from Lord Ashcroft, showing him behind the Labour Party. Might lose his seat. Have you been given any thought to who might lead the Lib Dems in that eventuality?
I'm absolutely certain Nick Clegg will win his seat and return as leader of the Liberal Democrats. One of the problems with the Lord Ashcroft polls is they don't actually name the candidates, and I think when the full position is revealed, he will be back and he will be comfortably returned, and he will return as our party leader. I have no doubt about that.
OK, well, he's got to go sometime, though, hasn't he? He can't go on and on and on. Now, when Mr Clegg does go, let me put it that way, have you got anyone in mind to lead it? Perhaps yourself?
No, I don't. We don't have a leadership problem, so we're concentrating on fighting this election and returning a large number of MPs and having a significant influence on national life after the election. That's where our focus is.
OK, Tim Farron? Tim Farron?
No, we're not talking about potential future leaders. Our minds are focused on completely different issues, which are fighting this election, working in the national interest, not thinking about future leaders.
OK. Mr Cable, thank you very much indeed. The Business Secretary focused on the job, as he says, in hand. Now, a look at the remarkable story of a young girl and her prosthetic arm. This is 7-year-old Faith Lennox, and she lost her arm when she was just a baby. And